Welcome to the very first live episode of the Fool Me Twice podcast. Today, I am your host, Ashley, and with me, I have my co-host, Sean, the Wizard of Waz. Hey, Sean, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm very good. So I wanted to give people a quick overview of what we're doing today. So we're going to do a quick 20-ish or so live, and we want to put out some teasers because we want to promote the live episode that we're doing this Friday, and we are going to get to that. But before we do,
there's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, "Fool me once, shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again."
from the GAF champion himself, George W. Bush.
Also known as Bush the Stupid, and where we get our namesake from. That is where Fool Me Twice comes from. Can't get fooled again. We're not going to let you get fooled twice.
That is exactly right. We are not going to let you get fooled twice. We're going to do our very best. And I just published one of our episodes today. Our introductory episode is already out. That is going to be on all podcast platforms eventually. But for right now, it's on Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. And so please do us a huge favor and like and subscribe to our channels, because that's the only way we can kind of get some traction. Right now, I don't even think it's very easy to find the Fool Me Twice channel. And there are some imposters out there who did it first, so who have this name. So we are trying to build up a little momentum there. But the introduction episode is out, which is basically how Sean and I met, the things that we are interested in discussing on this podcast, and kind of where we're going to take the show. After that, this week, I'm going to be releasing a 2-part series that we did on the history of propaganda. And if you have an opportunity to listen to that ahead of time before our show on Friday, that would be great, because when Sean and I were talking, he pointed out that many of these propaganda type techniques that were very old, used back in the early 1900s in this country, specifically from heavy hitters in the field, the OGs like Edward Bernays, they are still being used at this time in the 90s. And then, of course, to today. So we're going to get that released. So we'll have that. And if you don't have an opportunity to listen to that before the show on Friday, no worries. Just go back, and I'm sure that it will make sense. You will definitely recognize some of these elements. So make sure, like, subscribe, share. This is our very first live. We're going to keep it quick today, but the reason we're doing this again is to promote our Friday show this Friday, July 17th, 2026 at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be streaming on the Knights of the Storm channel, the Fool Me Twice Rumble, and the Fool Me Twice YouTube. So please join us. We would absolutely love to have you. It really helps Sean's self-worth if we have some other people in the chat. And actually, speaking of that, this was a very, very last minute thing. So I want to thank Jason Barker, who is tuning in right now, for getting us set up a very last minute on the Knights channel. Thank you so much. And then we have a couple of people over on the over in that channel, or Fool Me Twice channel, actually. So we have Ghost Art and Jason Barker here. So thank you so much for being here, and so glad that y'all were able to catch it live. So before we get into the real meat of the story and the drama, let's talk about some scandals of the 90s. I can only think of one, and it had something to do with a blue dress and a cigar. I think that was it, right?
Tell me more. I don't know this one. Yes, of course. You're talking about Bill Clinton himself, aren't you? The
Yes.
Monica Lewinsky scandal, the scandal of the 90s.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about this, and it's really interesting because as we get into some of the things that happened during that time and some of the absolutely incredible scandals that were associated with the Clinton administration, that when you look back retroactively or in retrospect, I suppose, that is really the only, I mean, that was the thing that got the most hullabaloo, right? So then in our conversation, I started thinking that was exactly, at least partially, because we talk about this function stacking, multifaceted, but I believe that at least partially that story was got so much attention because it buried everything else. What do you think?
That is a good point. It's a way to shift everything down in the newspapers because that was the attention grabber. And we did talk about the concept of the above the fold, right, Ashley? That's the, if you think of a newspaper, people read them back in the 90s, not so much anymore, but there were things called newspapers back in the 90s, back when I was a paper boy. And when a newspaper on a newspaper stand, when a stack of them were laid out, people walking by would see the top stories above the folded paper as they were stacked up. So that was the most important for a newspaper or a journalist, was to get, oh, left side above the fold. That's the first thing you're reading in the paper. And that's the first thing people are seeing when they're looking at the paper or purchasing the paper or walking by a newsstand. So it was incredibly important to the newspaper industry to get their top stories, or maybe their most propaganda worthy stories, front and center above the fold on the newspaper. So I did, if I may, go through some of the top scandals of the 90s that spent the most amount of time above the fold, if you will.
I will, and I also just want to thread this back to the forthcoming two-part propaganda series that I'm going to be releasing for us later this week, because there's a huge emphasis on that. And that's something that you touched on, is the fact that this, even back in, say, the early 1900s, like the 1920s timeframe, this is when we already started to see the consolidation of local newspapers being affiliated with the larger newspapers. So this was whenever stories would go all the way down from the top headline, from like the top newspaper companies down. And so that's not something that just occurred in 2019. This started a long time ago, and it was very important that they were maybe in lockstep, if you will, as far as the stories that they were putting out.
Absolutely. The consolidation of the newspaper industry, like you mentioned, and it is in the first part of our propaganda series. It was more profitable for early newspapers in the teens, post World War I era, and in the 20s, to use the editorship and the journalists of the big newspapers, of the New York Times, of the New York Post, of the Wall Street Journal. They were using those articles because it saved them a lot of time and money and effort. So those articles just got filtered down the line to the local newspapers that were trying to save a buck, but were also becoming under the thumb of big newspaper.
Exactly. So let's talk about some of the above the fold scandals that transpired in the 90s.
In no particular order. I'm sure this popped out in your mind, but Gulf War and the incubator babies. Absolutely.
That was a big one. So that was starting in the early 90s, because this was during George H.W. Bush's administration. When we first went to Iraq, we had the incubator babies, which was a huge, obviously that was part of manufacturing consent for the United States going to war in Iraq. And this was also the framing of Saddam Hussein, who we're going to be talking about soon as well. But this was the framing of him as a supervillain, and it was what was used as the guise to get the United States into war with Iraq the first time. Operation Desert Storm.
Absolutely. Well said. Operation Desert Storm, above the fold for many, many weeks. I wrote down a couple others that aren't too scandalous, but of course, there's the World Earth Summit that sparked Agenda 21. That kind of flew a little bit under the radar, but I personally think it was quite scandalous. Back in 1992, the death of River Phoenix. How many celebrity deaths do they put front and center of all the newspapers, of all the media nowadays? But that leads us to another celebrity above the fold, giant scandalous event. Your favorite, Ashley, Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding.
Ooh, that was honestly, it's a little nostalgic, is it not? And here is something to speak to how impactful that event was. I just saw a meme like today or yesterday, something, I don't know, my timeline is a complete blur, using the format of, I think it was something about citizens and flock cameras. And but just to speak to how impactful that event was, that meme is still being used to this day. It is an incredibly famous story. Everybody knows it. I don't know. It sure did drum up a lot of attention for the it wasn't 96, so it must have been what, 92? 94?
94, I believe.
Had to be 94.
I believe it was 94.
Because I believe it was before the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. But anyway, it was an iconic incident where Tanya Harding was accused of conspiring with her boyfriend and someone else in order to take out the knee of Nancy Kerrigan in order to prevent her from getting a gold medal.
Absolutely. And now, according to you, people are taking out flock cameras at the knee, just like Tanya Harding and her boyfriend did.
Right.
All right. Continuing on, of course, above the fold, we had the death of Kurt Cobain, another scandalous celebrity death. We could go on about that for hours, but we won't. Depending on your timeline, we've got Nelson Mandela becoming president. We won't go into any Mandela effects, but do your own research. Don't get fooled twice.
Sure.
The O.J. Simpson fiasco. This was years above the fold. This was an incredible scandal.
It was the trial of the century.
Absolutely. And a total show trial at that. I mean, people were repeating lines from those court cases forever. Taglines. If the glove don't fit, you must acquit.
You must
We're
acquit.
coming out of that.
Sean, if the glove, Sean, if the glove doesn't fit, then you must acquit. What are you not getting there? That's true.
Right. It doesn't fit. I must acquit. You made it so simple that
Thank you.
he must be innocent. Well, personal opinions, not going to come out on this because I think he was guilty of things other than killing his wife, but that's for another show.
Yes, definitely. We must talk about that because it is obviously it really was, in all seriousness, it was the trial of the century. And there was so much hullabaloo surrounding the case. If you were around and at an age where you like have memory of your life at that time, you are going to remember the white Bronco chase, the slowest police chase that has ever happened in the history of the world. And how many lanes? Like 6, 7, 8 lanes. I don't even know, with just like 10, 12 cop cars trailing. It was absolutely incredible. And of course, this was when Robert Kardashian was friends with the Simpsons, and he was not even a legal attorney. I mean, he was an attorney, but he was not a defense attorney, rather. And he ended up, being part of O.J. Simpson's team. And it was a very famous F. Lee Bailey, Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro. I mean,
Judge Ito,
yes, Marsha Hardin, and Chris. Anyway, Mark Furman. So there was a lot. This was also on the heels of the LA riots and the Rodney King beating. So a lot going on at that time.
Absolutely. A lot of people made off very well after that trial. What didn't make off well was the sale of white Broncos. That probably faltered for quite a while, unfortunately. They probably had to change the color on that.
But it's a classic car.
But it's a classic car.
And today,
yeah.
if you saw someone driving that car, it would be impressive that they had like that model in good condition. Anyway, go ahead.
Continuing above the fold, the scandals of the 90s. Tupac Shakur's death and Biggie Smalls' death, the notorious B.I.G., both quite scandalous, both with deep histories and conspiracies behind them. Maybe we'll have to explore that in the future, but quite scandalous, I would say, indeed.
100%. This was also the introduction of the real notoriety for one Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Sean Puffy Combs, and his partner. His partner at that time, Mace. And of course, there was conspiracy and rumors at that time because there was a lot going on, that Biggie Smalls and Sean Puffy Combs conspired to kill Tupac. And then we've heard other rumors. And I'm saying is rumors because I honestly have no idea that we know about CIA infiltration into the Black Panthers movement and that his mother was a Black Panther. And there's some other weird stuff. But anyway, it was huge at the time, this rivalry between the two groups.
Absolutely. Puff Daddy, like you said, partner with Mace at the time. We find out now he had quite a few partners, wink, wink, nod, nod. Going on to our next scandal, we've got another one of your favorites that we've talked about, Oklahoma City bombing. Ooh.
Now this one, this one is really, it bothers me because I mean, a lot of these are bothersome, but there was a resurgence in people discussing the Oklahoma City bombing in the last few years. So it did receive some attention. And Terry Yeeke, one of the first officers on the scene who was a first responder and who saved people, obviously ended up losing his life. And his wife, Tanya, at that time suffered a great deal, not only from the death of Terrence and from the fact that they called it a suicide. And it was obviously not. So there's so much human tragedy there. We know that the daycare center was in that building, in the Murrah building, and just absolutely devastating. And it was a really important event. Of course, there's a lot of lore about Timothy McVeigh and what his exact, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, what his involvement was. So we know he was there, and we know that he had military experience, but there's other people that have tried to connect the dots about some of the other weird things as concerning his background. And there's been many, many, many other suspicious deaths after the fact associated with Oklahoma City bombing. And this is one that really the people deserve justice. The truth deserves to come out. And here we are all this time later, still without the answers that especially the families deserve.
I totally agree with you. And we'll have to deep dive more into OKC in the near future. Are you ready for the next above the fold scandal of the 90s?
I am.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Tyson Holyfield. Lend me your ears, dear citizens, and let me tell you a story of the Tyson Holyfield. I was like 8 or 9 at the time, but that was still everywhere, and everyone was talking about. Quite scandalous. That's all I have to say about that. Really,
it was the bite heard round the world.
I like what you did there. You get a star for the day. Very proud of you. Trying not to laugh, but very good. The bite heard around the world. Man.
I'm actually proud of myself because I'm not always that quick on my feet as far as stuff like that goes.
That was good. I heard you. Moving on to our next scandal. You did mention this. 1996, the Olympics, Atlanta, bombing, summer 1996. That Olympics ironically started just a few days after another event that we're going to bring up that we will also be talking about on Friday. 2 days after it started, by the way. But yeah, quite scandalous. I don't even know the whole backstory of the 96 Summer Olympics bombing. Do you?
No, I know that they did a movie, which who knows how accurate that was or if pieces of this were accurate, but I really didn't. I was very into the 96 Olympics. You may remember the gymnastics team for the United States ended up winning gold that year. And this was Carrie Scruggs, and she landed on one foot because her other foot, her ankle was broken. It was I don't know. It was a sight to behold. I was completely hooked at that time, but I really don't know much about the Atlanta bombing. Or the Atlanta Olympics bombing. So maybe we'll have to dig into that at some point as well.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be a good learning experience because I really just have surface level knowledge on it, and I'm sure it goes very, very deep. And whatever the official story we've been given on that is, we can bet our bottom dollar that's not exactly what happened, because this is the playbook that the establishment follows. Another one of your favorite above the fold scandals from the 90s. I love the 90s. John Benet Ramsey scandal. Murder, less of a scandal, but quite scandalous nonetheless.
It was extremely scandalous because obviously it's the tragedy of a child being lost, especially in that way. That was especially horrific. And then there was just a grotesque nature of how the case was treated especially because of her being in child pageants. And so, she had the big hair and the makeup, and she looked like a little Barbie doll. It's very, very strange. And then, of course, you had John and Patsy Ramsey. And, if you start digging into that, and we've talked about this case quite a bit, that there's some very, very strange things in the background of that family for probably a couple of generations. And there's some other, just so many disturbing things or unknown things. It was, once again, another mystery that all these many years later has never been solved.
Yep, absolutely not solved. What church group were they a part of? Who were they friends with? What other groups did they associate with? Where was their money being funneled to?
Yeah.
Were they videotaping their daughter? Where was that being sent to? This has its own spider web of branch of scandals that it seems to be never ending. And
Truly.
I don't know how, how dare they give her pineapple as her last meal? Okay, that was a bad joke. That was a bad joke. I'm sorry.
Well, it's just but it's saying like so much was made of that, but in the regular media, the conversation surrounding the family friends of the Fleet White Jr. and Sr. that were very close. Yes, the connections with the Episcopal Church in town, those weird poems, none of that stuff got talked about. And then they run these true crime pieces on, like CBS or something like that. And of course, they never talk about this stuff. CBS had the audacity, if I recall, I believe it was CBS. And by the way, this is for entertainment purposes only. And this is all just the opinion of Sean and myself. But I'm pretty sure they intimated that Burke was the one that killed his sister. He was 9 years old.
Yeah. I think they're looking for an easy scapegoat for that, just in my opinion. I don't think he had anything to do with it. He seems a little bit too traumatized from something.
Yes.
He reeks of childhood trauma, even more than John Benet did. It's quite disturbing to watch him. It's quite disturbing to watch every member of that family. Didn't Mr. Ramsey date the mother of the girl that
Natalie
went
Holloway.
of Natalie Holloway for
Yeah.
a while. Unbelievably scandalous.
It's weird.
It's like this. The family traumas are just linking to each other,
Yeah.
and they've all got their own deep scandals, and they're all, in my opinion, in on it somehow, some way.
Yes, and I will say that I'm glad that you brought that up because I meant to say something about that. And the other thing that I'm going to point out, so this was in Boulder, Colorado, which is proximity to the Columbine area as well. And I believe approximately like 30% of that area, if I remember correctly, was employed by Lockheed Martin. And it just so happened to be that John Ramsey's company was a subsidiary of Lockheed Martin as well.
Very interesting. And we might as well hop, skip, and jump over there to Columbine since you mentioned it, because that was huge scandal of the 90s, above the fold, if you will. Have we been told the true story about that? Absolutely not, because we never are, but we're not going to let them fool us twice. Right, Ashley?
That's
your
exactly
answer
right.
is no. I like your answer. Good. That's kind of the advent of the American daily shooter phenomena, not the originals. There were some in the early 90s. There were several school and public shootings in Europe and in Japan and in Africa, kind of out in the open. Some of them were at schools, some of them were in subways, some of them were in malls. And I think the powers that shouldn't be probably learned from these events. They could have been their testing ground. And the big show for the United States of America was Columbine in, what was that, 97, 98? I think it was 1998.
I don't remember the exact year. I
Remember
do
the day?
remember the day.
420.
420, yes.
Oh, what a day. Ruining it for us, Columbine. So what else can we continue with here? Scandals of the 90s. Ruby Ridge, linking back to OKC. Poor family, gunned down, up in the woods, a lot of framing, killed the dog, they killed the baby, killed the mother, a couple members of the family.
They killed, if I recall, the baby was okay. The mother was holding their baby, though. They killed the son, they killed the dog, and they killed the mother. And just like what you said, they did entrap Randy Weaver over a sawed-off shotgun.
I almost wore my Remember Ruby Ridge shirt tonight.
Yep. It's always, and I'm glad we're talking about this stuff because this should not be buried. This should not be forgotten about. But unfortunately, our community has been vilified as being crazy people or whatever. But these things happened and they don't get talked about. So I think it's normal to ask questions about why they're being buried.
I totally agree. My list of scandals of the 90s is so long, Ashley. I'm so sorry. This is, let me try to sum it up real fast, and I'll list a couple and then we'll stop and talk about one, okay? Because I don't want to take all night doing this.
Yep, I've been blabbing too, and maybe we can revisit scandals of the 90s at another time.
Yeah, because there's so many, and it was such a pivotal time shaping the world we live in today. It's definitely worth looking at again. Not only did the 90s have good movies and some good music, it also had the scandals that shaped us and the tested propaganda tactics that are currently used on us today. So let me jump forward. The return of Hong Kong to China. Another death. Versace. Hale-Bopp and Heaven's Gate. Let's see what else we got here. Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed. Oh, this was above the fold globally. This was globally. Our rulers and leaders, the effing British, lose their Princess Diana. You remember where you were when you heard that?
Yes, I do.
Where were you?
I was, I guess I was in high school at the time, and I was hanging out with two of my friends in my bedroom. We were watching TV on the weekend, got the news. I was very upset about that.
It was quite upsetting. Even though we were so young, it hit all of us. Those damn paparazzo. Unbelievable. Gosh.
Yeah.
If only they weren't speeding. If only the British royals weren't actively trying to kill her.
Speculatively.
Speculatively, right. I have no proof of this.
And I remember the after effects of, Elton John. He remade his Candle in the Wind song that was originally made for Marilyn Monroe, and they sold it on a single CD. If anyone is, young, a CD stands for compact disc. It's the way us olds used to listen to our music. And they had a Princess Diana Beanie Baby. Beanie Babies were all the rage at that time.
Oh my gosh. I forgot about that crap. Damn. Thank you for bringing
dare
Beanie
you?
Babies back
That's
into
my
my
retirement
nightmares.
plan.
Is to sell all your Beanie Babies?
Yeah.
I hope you've got a lot. I hope all the little red hearts with the details on them are all encased in plastic.
Obviously.
In pristine condition.
The tie tags.
The tie tags, yes, whatever the hell you little girls called them, your Beanie Babies. I think I hid them from my brother and sister because I was so sick of finding them all over the house.
It's because you're a terrible person.
That's exactly right. Continuing with terrible people, actually terrible deaths. We've got the death of Chris Farley, quite scandalous, quite sad. Phil Hartman's death, murdered by his own SSRI jacked up wife, and then suicided. So a murder-suicide. We've got the death of Matthew Shepard. Do you remember this one?
If I recall, he was a gay guy that was beaten to death for being gay.
Yeah, that's the I guess you can call that the mainstream story. He was tied to a fence. This was in, oh man, someone's yelling at me now for not remembering, but South Dakota, I think. And he was tied to a white fence and beaten and left for dead. I believe there's much more to this story. There's a good chance he was also involved in some drug dealing that I've read about in the past. So it might not have just been a lover's quarrel. There might be some deeper roots into this. So something we may have to touch on again in the future, because I only know surface level, but I know we're not getting the official story. That's for sure. But it was used as propaganda everywhere. I mean, that was everywhere, thrown in everyone's faces. Look at what we're doing to them. Oh my God, he's just a nice, innocent boy. Maybe he wasn't so innocent. And maybe I'm wrong and I'll take it all back in the future. But we don't know until we do some digging.
It was definitely a horrible, horrible thing for sure. I remember that, but I really don't know very much about it at all, other than what I told you.
No worries. We'll dig back into that in the future. All right. We talked about Columbine. We do have another death of JFK Jr. Do you remember this one?
Oh my gosh.
Scandalous.
Oh my gosh. So true.
Poor guy.
What a tragedy.
Between Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, it goes down in fog. Probably some sabotage, probably some fuckery and tomfoolery going on there. Maybe some people that didn't want him running for office. Maybe he's on some kind of list somewhere. You know what I'm getting at, Ashley?
I do. And it's really hard to say because there's some other weird things like his, so he had his pilot's license, but he still had like a pilot coach or I'm not sure what you would call that, but basically somebody else should have been riding with them and they couldn't make it or something. And he wanted to fly anyway. At least that's the official story.
That is the official story. So again, another scandal from the 90s we're going to have to dive into. A little chop now, the scandal of Lorena Bobbitt. Are you familiar with this one? Would you mind explaining to us what happened that fateful night?
Lorena Bobbitt used a very sharp knife to remove the reproductive member of her husband, John Bobbitt. And this was mega viral. This story was absolutely everywhere.
Absolutely. It was the back and front of every joke everywhere. Every comedian talked about it. It was referenced in movies. It was on TV, radio, newspapers. Every man feels for Mr. Bobbitt. We all get it. We all feel for him. But it was reattached, right?
I
Tell me
think
from
so.
your firsthand knowledge.
So I think it was, if I recall, but I'm not 100% sure.
Gotcha. Okay. Moving on from the chop chop, we've got, do you remember the Amy Fisher, Joey Buttafuoco scandal?
Of course I do, because they tried to kill his wife.
Absolutely. Tell me more. What else do you know?
So a lot of this stuff, honestly, it's really interesting because it's probably just directly from the official story, because that's the age that I was, right?
Right.
So that's what I remember, basically, that this guy, Joey Buttafuoco, was like, he seemed like kind of a greaser-ish to me. He apparently had like his own auto body shop or something like that. He was married. He had a scandalous affair with Amy Fisher. She was very young. And then supposedly they conspired to kill his wife. That's what I remember from it.
Yes, and the woman that showed up at the house, at least according to the official story, she was, oh, I forget if she was 17 or 18 at the time, like 15 years or something younger than Joey Buttafuoco. And she claimed that her sister or something was cheating, was the one having the affair with Joey, but it turns out it was her, and in a relationship that had started when she was 16. So
Oh.
this had reeked in scandal from day one and was definitely above the fold for a while, no doubt about it. Quite disgusting, Mr. Buttafuoco. They should have Lorena Bobbited you for that one. Before we bobbited, I wonder if that's in the Urban Dictionary now. All right, let's get to the main course, but I'll just list a couple and we'll have to go back on these in the future. The entrance of America Online to the world. Waco. How can anyone forget Waco? Of course. Elian Gonzalez. Quite scandalous. Talk about a picture used for propaganda above the fold for weeks. Holy shit.
We should go back into that. And really quick, yes, Waco, everybody, just a heads up. So I believe the date was March 29th. It was exactly 1 year earlier than the OKC bombing. And supposedly part of the handling of OKC was done in order to try to make the Clinton administration and Janet Reno look better, because they looked so it was a very bad look to burn people alive. And talk about bad press, people that were absolutely smeared in the press. David Koresh and the entire group at Waco. And the narrative was framed in such a way that they deserved it. They were burned alive, and children and women were burned alive. And they had an opportunity to apprehend David Koresh many times. He went out on a daily run, and they knew that. So this is a horrible look. So that was supposedly some of the messaging surrounding that Oklahoma City and the way that was handled, because they wanted to get a win, because Waco was such a horrible look, which it should have been. That was disgraceful.
Yeah, the burning of women and children alive, burning of anybody alive is quite preposterous, but the method they did there and the years and it's 30 years later now, 30 years of lies and never admitting to anything and covering it all up with more and more lies. We'll definitely have to deep dive more into Waco in the future, because it seems like it's never ending. I've seen some fantastic documentaries on it, and it's quite daunting. It's enough to really wake you out of a stupor, for sure, if you are a normie.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a number of 90s scandals. There's one we're leading towards. All of these scandals we talked about have their official story. They all have official stories. Some of them we only know the official story. There's one scandal, we'll call it a scandal, the TWA Flight 800 scandal from 1996. Actually, July 17th, 1996, where 230 people lost their lives off the coast of Long Island, so off the coast of New York, at about 8:15 in the evening. Horrible tragedy, intense cover-up, intense coverage above the fold, and a lot of bad actors involved. And while we talked about this like a month ago, Ashley, when I said, hey, I've got an idea for a show. We've got the 30-year anniversary of TWA Flight 800 coming up. We should do a special for the anniversary. We're kind of dedicating it to the people that lost their lives and dedicating it to some of the whistleblowers that have mysteriously died or disappeared or have been demonized for 3 decades now. And this also is this is an interesting year because we have the 25th anniversary of 9/11. And what we're going to talk about on Friday will show, it seems to me that TWA cover up was a bit of a trial run for what they did in 9/11, how they were able to cover up some of those demolitions, explosions, the terrorists and companies and organizations and head honchos involved in those quote unquote investigations. It follows the same playbook as TWA 800. Does that follow, Ashley? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So essentially, what we saw with the tragedy of TWA Flight 800, the things that did not add up, and I want us to keep it in the speculative realm because, of course, we don't know. But what we can say is that a lot of these things do not make any sense. And then you pair things that are very obviously, if you were trying to do something on the up and up, this is not how you would do it. And then you pair it with whistleblowers going missing, or as you said, being demonized. So these things are a pattern that was used. And if we look at the approach for this particular event, then you can take that pattern and then you can apply that to a lot of what we saw with 9/11, which of course there's so many things that make no sense there as well.
Absolutely. And TWA has kind of been thrown under the rug. I think it's been pushed down the memory hole. I never hear it
Yes.
talked about.
Yes.
It's never anywhere. This is the 30-year anniversary, and the only people remembering it are the victims' family members, I feel, which is why I want to bring it out and bring it back into the limelight. We're going to put it above the fold on Fool Me Twice podcast because it is quite an important pivotal event. It was itself above the fold on the New York Times for months and months. People were glued to their newspapers and the TV back then, and early internet articles and internet blogs on AOL were talking about it back then. The conspiracies revolving around it, that started from the get-go because the official story that was being pushed from the beginning didn't make sense to a lot of people, and especially the hundreds of witnesses that we will get into on Friday, the hundreds of witnesses that saw something very different than what the establishment was putting out.
And that overlaps with OKC as well.
Totally.
So, and you and I had spoken about this, and just to keep it brief, but there was at least 24 people who had identified someone else with Timothy McVeigh. That person would be known as John Doe 2. Kenneth Trinidad was killed based on the fact that he supposedly looked like John Doe 2. He was in California. They picked him up, shipped him to Oklahoma, put him in jail where he was literally beaten to death. And his brother, Jesse. So Kenny had nothing to do with OKC. He was not there at all, not in the vicinity. He was in another state. And because they said he matched the description of John Doe 2, then he ended up dying. And his brother, Jesse, is still fighting for justice all these many years later. And the other thing that I wanted to say about that was, the narrative around John Doe 2 basically disappeared. Then after that, it was like, we don't know what you're talking about. What John Doe 2? So it's a real gaslighting of people that are like, I saw 2 people.
Quite interesting. Absolutely, Ashley. Damn, you're tying spider webs. I'm walking into spider webs now because you're tying it all together.
Call you Gwen Stefani
Call me Gwen Stefani.
because you're
Call me
walking in
Gwen
a spider
Stefani
web.
back in 1996. What a pivotal year. TWA on July 17th. This was 2 days before the Summer Olympics was about to start in the United States. It was also an election year, a re-election year for President Clinton. And this was also occurred a month or so after a terrorist attack in Saudi Arabia where a hotel was bombed, I believe. We will touch on it on Friday, but damn, what a time to be alive in 1996. I don't want to give anything away because I'm trying to hold back on all this damn TWA 800 research I've done over the last month. So I'm going to have to bite my tongue here and wait until Friday when I can blow your mind on the official story, Ashley.
Okay, perfect. Well, leave it to us to want to do a 20-minute episode, and we do almost 50 minutes. That is exactly perfect. So we're going to wind down from here, but I hope that everyone got a little bit of a sampling. First of all, a lot of these things are easy to forget from the 90s, but I want to emphasize that many of these things happened in the Clinton administration. And I would like you to ask yourself, if you are just at a high level remembering a couple of things from the Clinton administration, what stands out to you? Is it the blue dress? With that, I am going to sign off for Sean and myself. Do not forget, please like, subscribe, share if somebody else is interested in this. And we would absolutely love to see you this Friday, July 17th, 2026 at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on the Knights of the Storm channel, the Fool Me Twice Rumble, or the Fool Me Twice YouTube. So thank you so much. We will look forward to speaking with you very soon. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Good night.